This is the Slow Wardrobe. Come and have a look. Hello, welcome to episode 96 of the Slow Wardrobe podcast. My name is Linda and I'm your host. In this episode, I'm going to be, it's a bit confessional I guess, because I'll be going through all the works in progress and the abandoned projects that have been loitering at home in a big box. And this box was put together when I moved all my knitting related stash and project bags and needles and everything to do with my knitting into one room for the first time in my life. And that brought together all my stash, but also all my works in progress and abandoned projects. And I put all of those together in a box to be dealt with at some time. So when one of my very dear customers asked me about a sweater that she had seen me knitting in, I think it was episode 17. If I say any things that are wrong, then I'll repeat the correct thing underneath here. And I'll do that, anything going forward, I'll do that throughout the episode rather than try to remember and having written down all the yarns, for example, that are detailed in my knits beforehand. I'll add them in written version here underneath so that I don't have to do all the work up front because I'm always pressed for time with these. But anyway, wherever I have the yarn details, I will publish them in written format as I go through my project because there are plenty. So part of the reason that there is most probably not going to be any Layercake in this episode is that Andrea's working through a big pre-order of love dresses, and we've got a bunch of other orders in through the website as well. And as a result, we've got a pretty full order book. I don't want to run the risk that anybody has to wait for more than a month or 5 weeks tops for their order. So I'm not promoting anything else right now. I'm working on pre-orders, and in the next newsletter next week there'll be a new pre-order going out. But right now the only thing that is really special on the website is the sale that I have going on yarns as well. All my soliloquy yarns, which were already discounted, are an extra 20% off, as is all of my Trinity Twist, which you can't see because I've put these samples in front, and Fiber Space Cumulus. All of it 20% off until I think it's the 27th, the end of the 27th of July. Again, I'll put a shout down here if I've got that wrong. Sorry if I've got it wrong, but you'll see it below if I have. And so, most probably, I'm saying most probably because there are 2 days left in this week for me. And if I think of a compelling reason to do any Layercake, then I will shout out below and I'll put it at the end of this episode. But as far as I can oversee right now, this is an episode without Layercake. So let's get stuck in to all of my works in progress and all my abandoned projects. Here we go. So I thought I would start with the jumpers that are behind me. Some of them are nearly finished. There's one that is completely finished, and it's also my most recent work in progress. In fact, I'll start with that one first. See if I can maneuver myself in a way that I can actually reach it without pushing everything else over. Okay, move some stuff out of the way so you can actually see it. These are other projects that I will get to in due course. So this is the Tonka top, or a version of the Tonka top by Anke Strick. And I am knitting this in a linen, cotton and lyocell blend that I've spoken about in the last couple of episodes. It's got a really cool construction, and I have created a bit of extra width by giving it a slight A-line shape, because I wasn't quite happy with the width at the bottom. It was only slight positive ease compared to my hips, and it just makes me look rotund if I wear something close fitting like that. I need more positive ease to get a better silhouette and better proportions. So I then decided to, rather than keep knitting with the same kind of broken, slightly jagged edged stripe that I had, to go in the other direction with a very wide border. So the border was meant to be about twice as wide still to what it is here. And in order to give that border a bit of flair as well, because of course the way it's being knitted with a 3-2 rib, where the knit stitches are in the red and the purl stitches are in the blue. So the blue stripes are very slightly narrower than the red, just like they are in the main body. In order to give this a slight A-line shape, I'm gradually increasing my needle size as I go down. However, I tried this on again, because of course it being knitted top down, I can try it on. I was going to give it some sleeves, I was going to put a hood on, but you know what? I already know that I'm not going to wear this. And I've been worried throughout, I guess, that I wasn't going to wear this. The fabric is lovely, but just not for me. Not in its current state anyway. So, apart from its silhouette and the fact that I'm not sure it's big enough around the hips and flowy enough for me, the proportions just aren't right. I think that I've been stubbornly battling on, and throughout I've thought, I'm not sure this is right, I'm not sure this is right. I still don't know if it's right. So I'm going to cut my losses. I'm going to rip all of it back. Despite the fact that it's looking really promising here, it just doesn't look very promising when I put it on myself, and it's not going to do it for me. And like I said, there's nothing really wrong with it. The way it's come out, it's a lovely line with the back being slightly longer than the front, which I really like. So all of that is good. The width of the back is lovely. I just have the feeling that it's going to be one of those projects. And to be honest, I've got quite a lot of those. I'll be thrilled throughout knitting it. And once it's done, it's like, yeah, I love it. But I just don't wear it. And I think this is going to be one of them. I'm not going to wear this. And I don't know anybody in my family who would. So, out it goes. The Tonka top, at least in this fabric, is not for me. I think if I re-knitted, possibly in my own linen yarn, which is much finer, which is a 600 meters per 100 grams. I think this is 400 if I've got it right. If I've got that wrong, I'll put it down below. It just doesn't do it for me. And knitting it on bigger needles would be another option. But this fabric, the way it is, I think a bigger needle is not going to improve the fabric. It's just going to make it look too loose somehow. So, RIP. And I'll do something else with it. When I bought this yarn, I bought 6 50-gram balls of the red, 4 50-gram balls of the blue, with an idea of doing some kind of color block with red at the top and blue at the bottom. I then changed my mind and went for this. So back to the drawing board. I'm going to rip it back. It's a lot of work, so it's a shame, but I can't see it happening. So, very sad decision, but decision made. I will rip this back and back to the drawing board. Right, next one. That is a project that I knitted quite a while ago. I love it. It looks good on me, it's wide enough, it's just got enough positive ease to look nice. However, it has an issue. And it is, let me check where it is. I think it's the bottom one. Yeah. It is this section of the red color work that does not have enough stretch in it. All the other color work is fine, but just with those, in total, 5 rows of the pinkish red yarn, I haven't given it quite enough, the floats, I haven't made the floats quite big enough in the back to make it nice and flowy around my shoulders, which is not an issue here, because where that sits, it doesn't really need to stretch much. But down below here, which sits around the top of my arms, which of course does need to stretch when I move my arms sideways, it's just a little bit too tight. So I've already presented this when I finished the jumper and said I am going to cut it open, rip back those 5 rows, re-knit them, and then graft the jumper back together again. And it's just a matter of carving out the time and taking maybe just one weekend or something at home when I have some free time and sit down for a couple of hours and do this. Have I taken that time? No, I've always got too much on my plate and I haven't done that. But coming into this autumn, I'm still very much on my yellow and gold kick in terms of the colors that I love wearing. So this would be a great one to wear once the temperature goes down. So an extra motivation to actually do something about it in the course of the summer. So it's ready to wear for autumn. So that's jumper number 2, and it is a salvage job. It just needs some remedial work done to it, and then I can wear it, and I think I will wear this with pleasure. So this is definitely a keeper. Trying to maneuver these in a way that I can move around a little bit and you can see both them and me. So I'll time turn the other way. Here are jumpers number 3 and 4. I'll start with this one. This is the jumper that I was knitting, I think in winter time. I don't quite remember. Again, I'll put the date down here. And this is a blend, or yarns held together, of, they are stripes that are knitted with one stripe in Art Yarns Cashmere 2-ply, and the other stripe knitted in Yak Blend 2, held together with one strand of the 2-stranded Art Yarns mohair. Again, I'll put the proper names down here. So I split every hank into 2 separate strands of the mohair, and then hold one of those strands of mohair together with the Yak Blend 2 to achieve the greenish stripes, if you like, in the jumper. And I actually got so far with this. The sizing is great. It's got that lovely loose, kind of flowy, slouchy look that is one of the looks that I really like. I have finished one sleeve. I'm this far with the cuff of the second sleeve, marked by, even a little bit, marked by that little yellow marker. So I've got like 10 rows or so, rounds or so left of the second cuff. And then I am going to do a similar width border or edging at the bottom of the jumper with the stripes going in the other direction. So I'm really repeating what I was doing there, or I repeated here what I was doing there in a slightly different format. I love the kind of sturdy fabric that you get when you do this type of ribbing with the 2 colors, and you get, of course, you get all the floats behind. I hope you can see that a little bit. So you're floating the colors that you're not working with. And again, I think this is, This is a 2x2 rib to knit in the yak blend 2 held together with the mohair, and then 2 purl in the, at this point, very colourful cashmere. I really like what's happening in terms of colours. I'm very happy with it. I don't know why and how I lost my mojo, but just pulling it out yesterday and putting it on this mannequin ready to show you today, there's no way I'm going to stop knitting this. I'm going to keep going with this, and I think I'll put an I-cord around the edge here because I like that loose open neck. So this is back on the table, this project. I will finish it and wear it with pleasure. And then last but not least, this baby, which is more than 2 years old. I was knitting this in the early spring of 2020. That makes it 3 years old. Anyway, this is a stripe of I think it might be the Liberty cashmere and lamb's wool, if I remember correctly. I'll put it down here because I'll have the details still, which is the dark grey, and then that is striped with a Rico sock yarn, a multicolored Rico sock yarn that is discontinued, and that I bought everything I could find in this colorway in England. I think I still ended up buying more in Holland because I love the colorway so much. And this is a design that I came up with myself. It has these diagonal panels in the front, as you can see, which creates this pointy front and this nice deep V-neck. And then in the back, it's just got a straight panel. So it's down just about covering the bum, in the back straight, and then it has these diagonal fronts. And one of the reasons that I stopped knitting on this, I was telling you at the time, was that I wasn't sure what to do with the sleeves. I since then decided what I do want to do with the sleeves, but I never got started again. So this is a real shame not to finish this. This was going to be one of my own designs. I'm not sure if I'm going to get around to writing it up. And I think it's one of the reasons that I ended up stumbling with it. I love designing, but I hate writing them up and writing patterns. It's taken me a long time to admit that to myself. But there you have it. So the cardigans that I knit earlier this year, that I knitted out of the Malabrigo Finito, that will be reknitted in Yak Blend 2. That's a pattern that I will write up. I really kept very good notes throughout writing that, so it shouldn't be too difficult for me to do. But with this one, or also with this one, I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to writing that up. I just don't take the time, and it's partially because I am so focused on Layercake that is doing so well. I get so much positive feedback from my customers, and there literally are only so many hours in a day. It doesn't stop me from coming up with ideas and knitting them, but to then set big blocks of time aside to write up the patterns, I just don't see myself fitting it in going forward. So that's those 4. And not bad, ultimately. Only one of them will be frogged. It's the most recent one, like I said. But I have rather a lot of other projects, which I will talk through one by one. Some of them are so old that I have actually no recollection how old they are. And they all have something about them that stopped me from ripping them back at the time. So I'll talk you through them one by one. I hope you're enjoying this. Bear with me. Here we go. I have a pair of socks that is knitted in, I think it's the colorway here, Be Dragons. That was dyed for me by Heather, Sparkle Duck, who sadly isn't with us anymore. And this was a design that has got a very random pattern. If I hold it like this, I hope you can see that. A random pattern of little eyelets that gets more frequent towards the top and then is very regular at the top. So they're little eyelets that are very regularly spaced, and then they just slowly start petering out, and then there's just a smattering once we get to the ankle level of the sock, and then the rest of the sock is knitted in regular stocking stitch with an eye of partridge heel. I've actually worn these socks, and I made them really slouchy on purpose. The idea was that if you wear them slouchy, you can see that random pattern of eyelets around the leg. The idea was to wear these with trainers, which I have done. And again, this was a pattern that was going to write up because of that random. I think it's got 4 repeats. Yes, it's a repeat of 4 sections of random eyelets. I can still see what I've done, but did I ever write it up? This is another good example. No, I didn't. And now I'm actually in the process of discontinuing my soliloquy yarn. So my guess is that this is they might be like 8 or so years old. I should just resume wearing them, which is what I was doing. So, project number 1. I'd actually completely forgotten that I had them. It looks like the yarn has been washed and worn a number of times. So rather than keeping it in a box and not writing up the pattern, I can just resume wearing them. Well, that was an easy decision. There'll be many of these to come. Bear with. Okay, this is another beautiful project of it was going to be a massive shawl. It looks like I've got some pattern instructions here. I think this is from a book with his Victorian knits. Not even sure. It is yes it is. It's a circular shawl, or maybe it's a big square actually. I think it's a big square. I think I'm going to try and hold it up in a way that I can maybe show you one of the sides of the square. These are 2mm needles. It is super, super fine cobweb yarn. As you can see, really, really fine. We're talking, my guess is 1500 to 2000 meters per 100 grams. And it's a very simple chevron-like. Oh, there's more than 4. 1, 2, 3, 6 sections. Triangular sections. Is that visible? Oh, maybe like this. So this is one triangle. 6 triangular sections with these chevron shaped V's going all the way from the middle up. I have no idea. I would have to look up what the pattern is. If I can find it, I'll put it down here. And if I can find it, I'll put a photograph of the design next to me here. I stopped knitting this a very long time ago. The yarn is beautiful and I just got bored with it. Since I stopped knitting this, I have knitted a huge amount of, oh, some stitches come off the needle here. Okay, I'll hold this together because I can salvage that. I think that literally just happened. Since I stopped knitting this, I have knit a humongous amount with very fine needles. And as such, I'm much more used to it than I was when I started this project. So I haven't completely given up on it yet, but maybe if I see photographs of the shawl, if I can find it, then I might be motivated to do something with it again. Not quite ready to rip this out. I really need to have another think and revisit it, because I think the result, once it's finished, will be stunning. Then on to the next pair of socks. Well, it's not a pair of socks, it's just one sock. Again, this is Soliloquy in the charcoal slate, one of the two, knitted on 2mm needles. This is a design that I came up with myself. Knitted bottom up, and it has an almost lozenge shaped design that just sits around the front. It's kind of wrapped around the front of the foot. If I try and hold this out of the way, this little bit of yarn. If I hold it up like this, I hope you can see that it has this lace section that runs from the top of the foot on the front of the leg in this V shape, and as such it'll have a V shape in the back where those two diagonal lines come together going to the top of the heel, and then the back section of the leg and the heel and the rest of the foot are just regular stocking stitch. So this is an example of a very simple lace pattern. I'm pretty sure I've never written up what I've knitted, and after one sock, before I even knitted the cuff, I got bored and abandoned the project and never did anything with it again. I can't imagine knitting these socks. I'll probably rip this back to the top of the foot and then maybe knit plain socks, or maybe not, because plain socks, I'll be bored with those as well, let's be honest. So the jury's out, but ripping back is what I'm going to do. Jury's out as to what I'm going to do with it, but with the yarn, but I'm going to rip this back. Okay, next one. This is a very small ball of, I think it's just 50 grams of silk, 100% silk. It might be a fiber spade silk that I bought years and years and years ago. And by the looks of things, yes, that's the start of Marin. That's an Isolde pattern. I knitted a Marin before, and I wanted this to be a very small, short, scarfy that I can vigorously block, I'll steam block it, and like flatten so that it's open and flat and just loose, and that I could wear just when there's a little bit of a chill or I want a little bit of decoration around my neck. It's a pink speckle with a little bit of yellow and orange in it. It's a beautiful color yarn. This I can imagine finishing and wearing. My challenge will be to match my gauge, because I have removed the needles and I have not put anything on in terms of reference as to what I was knitting with. My guess is a 3¼ needle, knowing me. So I will resume this and hopefully knit a complete Marin or a smaller version of the Marin out of it, depending on when I'm halfway through my yarn. I, of course, can just keep weighing it, and when I'm halfway through, I'll reverse back out. So, to be resumed. I love it. That was a positive one. I didn't know I was going to decide that, but yep. Right, onwards and upwards. Oh, this is another tricky one. This is a Kieran Foley pattern. It is stunning. I think the pattern is called Renaissance Stripes. Yes, it is. And the total shawl, it's a big shawl, looks like that. It's beautiful, multicolored. This is a kit that I think I bought on a whim at the Knitting and Stitching show. Must have been about 10 years ago. This is copyright 2014. I think it was a new design of his at the time. So I will have bought it in 2014 or 2015. And I merrily started knitting. I love it. I love what I've done so far. Look, I've got all my yarns hanging on these little bobbins. They're great. You open this up and wind or unwind your yarn onto it, and then you close it, and then you can just pull it out depending on when you need the yarn. So you don't have lots of balls of yarns that are unwinding, hanging off your work. Still, so holding this up against me, this is how far I got. 2mm needles, and I haven't gotten any further than this. Oops. I haven't gotten any further than this because I discovered that despite knitting with 2mm needles as prescribed and being a loose knitter, the gauge for this shawl is huge. The gauge, according to the gauge, this should be about 50% wider than it is. I do not understand that because I am a loose knitter. I'm using the needles that were prescribed, yet I'm getting a completely different gauge. So I don't know how anybody would achieve such a loose gauge on such small needles. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks. I thought, hang on a minute, do I need to redo this and knit something completely different? Knit a much looser gauge, although looking at this, I actually love the fabric that I'm getting. I was so flummoxed by that I haven't resumed knitting, which is a shame. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I figured maybe I should go up just one needle size, go to a 2 1/4, but then it's going to be a very long shawl and it's going to have a slightly narrower end at one end. Then there's also the fact that if I look at the bottom of this color section, for example, this is slightly wider and this is slightly narrower. My stitch count hasn't changed, so my gauge has changed. This is somehow knitted slightly looser, and I've gotten slightly tighter going further up, which pleads for going up a needle size, so I at least get back to my original gauge. It looks like they've all got that a little bit. So I think that's what I'll do. Ever so often you change colors. As you can see here, I've gone from a darker blue with a darker pink, and then you go to a lighter blue with a lighter pink. It looks like I've just changed colors again here. So maybe this is a good point with that color change of going just one needle size up from a 2 to a 2 1/4mm needle, and then keep going. It's a labor of love. It's very slow because you end up knitting a combination of lace and color work, but the result is going to be an heirloom, really. I saw one lady wearing one, so it must have been 2015, because I saw someone wearing one at the show and it had taken her a year to knit it. So just seeing that on her, I thought, oh, I have to have one of those. And the rest, as they say, is history. Here we are, 9 years later, 8 years later, and this is as far as I got. In terms of colors, the colors are just sumptuous. They are to die for. They're beautiful. They're all here, as is my pattern. So, up one needle size and keep working on it. I will report back when I've resumed this. But this is a project that I'm going to keep going with. Next, completely random here, as you can see, but there you have it. Next, oh, this is not knitting, this is crochet. I've strung these on a knitting needle to keep them all together, she said. There we are. Okay. What I have here are a whole bunch of tiny little granny squares. This is a project that I've showed in the past. I've got whole squares and half squares, and this was to do a finer version of the Ziggy. I'll show a picture of the Ziggy. I'll show some of my progress. I've shown these in the past. They're crocheted in soliloquy, which is wonderful for crocheting. So if you love crochet, and this is a 2.5mm needle, perfect for soliloquy. If you love crochet, then I can really recommend the soliloquy that I have left. And the colors that I've chosen here were based on a blanket that I have at home, a woven blanket, an old woven blanket that I bought years ago from Jen Patola at the Woolfest show in June. Used to be in June up in Cumbria, and I bought that blanket. I loved the colors, and I always thought at some point I'm going to knit something in the colors of the blanket. So this is what I decided to knit. And once I saw all the colors knitted up, a number of the squares, I decided that actually I wanted to inject something fresh, something citrusy. And that's why I've got that orangey color around the outside. So here are a bunch of my originals that don't have that edging. Those are the original colors, if you like. And then I added that edging around them, added that extra pop of color before they then all get sewn together into the ultimate scarf. I have no idea how big I would want it. I'm just sitting here thinking now, actually, I could just start piecing it together and see how much I've got. Because it could just be another little scarfie rather than having something big and long and arduous. Say, why don't I make something small out of it? Little, you know, a little bit like the Sophie scarf that is so popular still at the moment. Just a little one, just a little piece of jewelry, in fact. And I may have enough for that. There's an idea. Could be another fun little thing to do this summer, especially because I don't have a lot of squares left that need one of the orange edges around it. I'm pretty much ready to put together what I've got and then see how much it is. Okay, decision made. Not cut my losses. I was going to say cut my losses, but not cut my losses. It's capitalize on what I've got and turn it into a finished project rather than not working on it. Oh, my hook. Let's keep them together. Right, next. With any of these projects, of course, I always welcome your comments and feedback. This is a Piri Floors. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Glove. This is a Kate, oh my gosh. Have I got it here? Kate Davies, sorry Kate. A glove. This pattern exists as a hat, which I knitted. Love it. Never worn it. And mittens. And I thought, oh, mittens. If you can do mittens, you can do gloves. and a mitten. I'm not keen on mittens, but I like the idea of a glove. So I started turning the pattern into a glove, succeeded, and then immediately got bored with the exercise. So I literally have the tip of a thumb to do, and then of course the other glove. No, bored, abandoned. I will never finish these. They're a decent fit as well, but nah, not gonna happen. Fickle knitter, hashtag fickle knitter for sure. So I might as well pull these out. I've got more of the yarns. So I've got a decent stash actually of the, I think it's Jamieson and Smith. So this is, oh no, it's the Rowan Felted Tweed. Rowan Fine Tweed. Don't really know what I have with that. May have to check that, but this is not going to be knitted. This is not going to be finished. This is going to be ripped back and repurposed at some point. Next. Oh, this is some yarn that looks, it's really interesting yarn. Oh, these were different dye tests that I did on a yarn that I bought. I've kept proper track of the different tests that I did. What I, acid blue, Procyon yellow. Oh, this is a yarn that has both cotton and wool in it. I have no idea what the yarn is, but that's why I've used both acid and Procyon dyes. So as an example, this is done with acid blue. So the floof on this yarn is wool, and the binder in the center is cotton. So with Procyon yellow and acid blue, I achieved this dye effect, and then I knitted a little sample to see how that works up. I gave it a little star, so I guess this was one of my favorites. I have no idea how old this is, and unfortunately I don't know what yarn it is. I need to try and track that back. I need to just rip it back as well. I can't. Properly abandoned. No idea and no recollection what it was. Pair of unfinished socks. Working from a sock blank. This is a sock for my husband. I can recognize that for the long leg. It's beautiful soft yarn. I've shown these before, I'm sure. This is a sock blank. I think it's from Hedgerow Yarns. Love it. And super easy to work. It's a typical travel project for me. So I'm not sure these were the original needles. I may have stolen the needles that I was working on, or I may have taken it on a plane and replaced my steel needles for carbon needles, so I could definitely fly with it. Don't remember. Halfway through the foot of sock number 1. No reason really why this is lingering. I just need to put it back to the top of the pile and take it with me when I go somewhere. So I have a nice little pocket project. These will be knitted in due course. Next. Oh, this all feels a little bit heavy because it's got a cone of linen in it. Oh, it's got some balls of linen as well. But most importantly, it's got a piece of knitting in it that I wanted to show you. So there's lots of bits of linen yarn and some of the little tassels that I make in the linen that I really enjoy making. But the most important thing, and what I want to show you, is the kind of knitting that this is. It is a lace border, and if I hold it up, put this out of the way because it catches my knitting. If I hold it up like this, you can see that it's kind of little leaves with these points sticking out. So it was my bid at making a nice, loose, open border that looks like old Victorian lace that I could put against the edging of my existing, or either my existing oatmeal duster or an undyed linen duster to match the color, because the oatmeal may probably be a little bit lighter and it'd be nice to match it. So it was still building on the synergy idea of synergy tops and synergy range within a Layercake, where we would have linen garments like the synergy top, for example, that has a sewn, woven and sewn body with a shorter panel in the front, longer panel in the back, just like the step top that I'm wearing. And then instead of having fabric sleeves, the sleeves are knitted and the front panel is knitted as well. So you make a combination of a woven and knitted garment by adding pieces of knitting to it yourself after it's been sewn for you. So Synergy top is still going, and I wanted to build on that by coming up with other ideas and lace edging, because lace works so well in linen and holds its shape so well. The lace edging was an idea. I've got lots of it already, as you can see. And again, just abandoned it without proper reason. I haven't given up on this, but I need to find the time to return to it. So, not to be ripped out, but to, at some point, need to be prioritized again. Still love the idea. We're nearly there. Socks. Socks for husband. This was sock yarn that I bought in February of 2022 when Unravel started going again after the COVID pandemic. And I just visited and did a walk around, which I recorded and is in one of my previous episodes. Then had a lovely chat and bought this yarn. Have I got the labels here? No, of course I haven't. Anyway, it was Garthenor yarns and sock yarns and two beautiful colors. And started again a sock for my husband, very rustic yarn, this. But I think it'll be lovely for thick winter socks. Got through the heel, turned the heel and abandoned it. Almost at the same point as the previous ones. Did you see that? So again, need to revisit, need to finish the socks. They're stripy, so once you're going on the stripes, you end up going, because it's a couple of rows in one, so a couple more rows so I can start the next stripe, that kind of thing. But still abandoned. This is another one of Susanna's beautiful project bags. I've got so many of them. This was one of them. Completely forgot to highlight the bags that this is all in. Oh, love her bags. I must ask her if she'll do another range of bags in my linen. Shall I do that? I think I'm all sold out of the previous collection that she made for me. So I'll ask her to do another collection in my linen of her beautiful embroidered bags. I hope she says yes. Anyway, the sock needs to be back in rotation and finished at some point. Then, nearly done with this. This is the crocheted phone bag in a double, sorry, it's very crumpled up, in a double gradient. So we're going from grey to duck egg blue, and then from duck egg blue to ultimately to eau de Nil. The last colour I think is yet to be added. Yes. So, and for some reason, I think I've gone a little bit too narrow with this. Put in too many decreases somehow. I need to double check that. If not, I'll have to rip it back, which would be a shame. But look, it's a little bit fluty. It's not supposed to be this fluted. Need to check that. May have to redo. Darn it. But I will. It needs to be right. These are gradients that are coming this autumn with some other new Layercake colors. So 2 more to go. This is a shawl pattern that I completely forgotten about. It's a beautiful yarn. It's one of the Beelum yarns. Look, one of these beautiful, do you recognize it? The Beelum gradients. They're stunning. Love these colors. And we started this. Oh, it was one of the Fiber East shows, and we started knitting this shawl shape. Looks like it's got this massive hole in it. I recently asked Sharon from 5 Moons what the name of this pattern was, and she remembered. So I'll be able to find the pattern back. This is the start here. Okay, so it goes the other way around. And we just started this shawl knitting at the show in the evenings. And then I didn't do anything with it when I got back home. These beautiful leaves here and another leaf here and this massive hole. I don't know what. Oh, and more leaves here. So it's beautiful leaf shapes. But somehow we were all going to do the same one. I got this far and I never resumed. So I will revisit the pattern, see if I still like it. If I still like the pattern, I will resume. If not, I will rip back and knit something else because the yarn is stunning. I love the colors. And it is in one of my yarn bowls from Lantern Moon. This is a great yarn bowl. You have the little hole here for the yarn to peep out, and you can carry it around like that. Really nice, recommend it. And then last but not least, finally there in a project bag made for me by my friend Helen. Helen has relaunched a website called Weft of Color. I'll put the address down here. Really, really beautiful what she's making. But she made me this little project bag, little pocket here in the front. Oh, they're just really simple stitch markers. Stitch markers. And what's in here? Shame, but not hiding anything. This is the linen. Make sure I don't pull it apart. Version. Very, very long, as you can see, of the Simple Swirl in the Pebble colorway. Started in white, then gradiating to undyed, and then back to white, nearly back to white. Got one more color to go, and then I would have this lovely Simple Swirl. And because I was knitting it as a sample for the shows, I was considering then moving from the white to the black, I think. I was considering putting another color, combining another color, just to show another gradient as well on the same sample. But seeing this here now, I think I'll just add the white, and then it's finally a wearable sample, and of course a lovely one to boot. Got so close. So close yet so far. A bit of a mess here. Bit of a tangle of yarn. That is one of the things with linen that you have to be very, very careful of. Never pull too hard, because if you make a knot, then it is not easy to remove. So always check whether it's a knot or just a twirl. See what I mean? If at some point that yarn went through itself, then you've actually got a serious knot, and that's exactly what I have here. So rather than pulling it and ending up with a knot that is then much more difficult to remove, linen of course knots beautifully, especially when you don't want it to. There we are. So abandoned, so close to the finish, and I will revisit. And that's about it. Those are all my WIPs, all the ones that I could find anyway. I don't think I've got any others. There we are. That's the end of my white. My last color, and that's the white with 2 threads of white, 2 ends of white with 1 of undyed, which is the color that I'm working on. Before that, I then eventually get to the all white. Let me know what you thought of all my WIPs. My abandoned projects. The ones that I'm going to rip back, and the ones that I'm hopefully going to finish. And the ones that are still in the waiting room because I haven't quite decided. Back to a regular episode again next time. I'll see you again soon.